Now, this Victorian election campaign should be about the Labor government racking up the worst debt of any state by far, the most corruption inquiries, the harshest lockdowns, the highest COVID death rate thanks to its incompetence. But suddenly, we've seen an eruption of cultural issues in the past few days, and ones that actually affect all Australians. Issues that really need sorting out, because it's about things that make you think this country's on the slide. 3 examples, all from the past couple of days. 1, well, you already know the left has taught a new generation to despise our flag.
But the Australian flag, to me, has now become... I identify that with racism. Does anyone else?
Now, the federal Greens clearly agree. They even refuse to have the Australian flag fly behind them at press conferences, put it aside. Federal Labor does fly the flag, but the position in the strident colours of the Aboriginal flag in the middle, well, it really dominates under the arrangement Labor has now. Let's go to Victoria, this campaign. It's the most radical state. This push against our flag is so effective that Greens and Labor campaign volunteers in the seat of Maryborough in the country last week objected to the Australian flag being flown on the lone flagpole outside the early polling centre and had it taken down. They reckon if there wasn't room for an Aboriginal flag representing just one race, then we shouldn't fly the Australian flag that represents us all. Now, have you had enough of this racial division, this shaming of Australia, this tearing down what unites? You're seeing it now in Victoria. Another second cultural battle from that state. It's like we saw just then with the Prime Minister. When your argument is weak, you switch to the spear. You call someone a racist. Well, last weekend, Catherine Cumming, a candidate from a fringe party, Angry Victorian, said the Premier should be turned into a red mist. It was disgusting. She says she should have chosen language well. That's the least of it. But the Premier, who's been having a terrible campaign, jumped on this and turned it into an attack on the Liberals because on this list of preferences, it had already put Cumming down at number 10. Like there's a couple of parties before her, but a number behind. Oh, terrible. The Premier used that excuse to tweet that Nazis, racists and bigots have no place in politics, no place in our state, and he claimed the Liberal Party are actively supporting candidates who espouse those views. It was obviously a calculated smear, get the heat of him, etc., etc. But the Deputy Premier, by the way, yesterday kept it going, although she could not or dared not name a single candidate who was a Nazi.
Are you able to tell us, Deputy Premier, where those Nazi candidates are?
Well, we have seen extreme behaviour, whether it was yesterday in the heart of the Melbourne, whether it was for days on end.
When you describe someone as a Nazi, is that a catch-all for extremist terms? Is that you can say not splitting hairs, but it is a particular term. That
it is. It is.
Connotation.
And what we've seen, whether it was yesterday, recent weeks and months last year, when these extremists brought gallows to the steps of the Parliament for days on end, where we've had candidates, and we don't want to give them any extra airtime than what they deserve.
Jacinta Allen, you're embarrassing yourself and trashing our culture. The Liberals actively supporting Nazis that's nuts. It's disgraceful, that smear. And how many elections are we now going to decide by the biggest smear from the biggest liars? We see that too much in our country.